This is Comic Geek Speak, special Second Chance number 1. And welcome to Comic Geek Speak. I'm Brian Deemer.
And I'm Tasha Deemer.
I'm Peter Rios.
We are sexy bitches, yeah!
And for our special episode, with us on the telephone is Gravity penciler Mike Norton. Welcome to the show, Mike.
Hey, thank you for letting me be here.
Hey, thank you for joining us.
Are you working on anything at the moment while you're talking to us today? Or
I just finished my page for the day, so yeah, I just did a Spider-Man page. Got the Mad Thinker on it. Remember him?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Cool. What book is that
fun.
for?
Marvel Adventures.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, well, the purpose of our show is to put some more, flesh out our Second Chance character a little more. When last we left her in episode 50, we had just gotten around to kind of getting the loose ideas for her. And so I think we narrowed it down for this episode. We want to give more meat to her powers and her costume, because the most important things about a superhero, never mind their whole backstory, right?
Yeah, I mean, when I'm trying to come up with stuff for that sort of thing, the costume and the powers part are always the hardest part for me. I never really even think about the story, and that might actually show on some of the stuff that I've done by myself, but I don't know. I tend to let the writers think of stuff like that.
Actually, to kick off this episode, would you mind talking a little bit, if you're able to, about the process of creating Gravity, just so we can kind of get like a starting point? You don't have to reveal like secrets or upcoming things.
Oh no, that's not a problem. I mean,
cool.
Yeah, the way that actually started was Sean had this idea of this character, and he pretty much kind of typed out his powers and the way he saw them, and the way he saw the character in a format a lot like you remember those Marvel handbook entries. He just wrote it out like that, which really gave me this really good basis for where to go as far as the way that he looked. I mean, he had his name, his secret, his occupation, his place of birth. He had a little bit of back history that he had for him, and then what he thought of as his powers. Because right now, I don't know if anybody's been reading it, but the extent of his powers still aren't really known to him or anybody else. So, I take that as a basis, and since his history is he's from a small town in Wisconsin, his family owns a marina, I figured, and he wants to go to a large city to become a superhero, like his idol is Spider-Man. So I figured, here's a guy, he's in a small town, what would he do if he wanted to make a superhero costume? Because things like in the Spider-Man movie, I always thought it was funny that, he goes straight from this really jacked up hoodie outfit when he's fighting the wrestling match, and then all of a sudden he's got this really slick costume under his bed when he goes out and he's Spider-Man. I was wondering when he made that.
And that's some fancy fabric he got himself.
Yeah, I know. All of a sudden, Spider-Man's a seamstress, it's a comic book and that stuff's allowed, but I wanted to think about what would an actual 19 or 20-year-old guy do if he was going to do that. And so Gravity's costume is actually more similar to what Peter Parker was wearing when he was in that first wrestling match. I figured, well, if I were going to make a superhero outfit, if you look at a lot of the stuff you see in like sports equipment stores, and I was looking a lot at like motorcycle equipment, the outfits that they wear on those really fast motorcycles are very protective and almost look very superhero, the way that they're colored and stuff like that. So I was figuring that would be the first place I would look for that kind of thing. And that's why he wears these baggy pants. They're really motorcycle pants. They have the pads in them and stuff like that. And I figured his outfit underneath would be kind of like the kind of stuff that you wear when you're deep sea diving or whatever. That not spandex, but the rubber suit kind of stuff.
Right.
And his goggles are actually based off a pair of Oakley sunglasses that I saw in a magazine once. So they are. I mean, it's really based in real life, the costume design, and I really looked at where the character's coming from before I go and design something like that.
Yeah, you did a sketch of our character based on the information out of episode 50 alone, and
right.
It was, definitely in the zone that at least Peter and I were envisioning in our head. A young woman, but not necessarily the sexiest woman or the most revealing outfit you ever saw, to try to get away from that stigma.
Right, and since he didn't really nail down the specifics of the character, it was kind of a real general guess at what the character would be wearing. I liked a lot of some of the takes from in the gallery you have on your website, where they were they took these like retro sort of looks, and it sort of made sense if the woman was actually older than she looked, for her to have sort of a retro style, but a lot of that stuff isn't necessarily practical, so
right.
I didn't know exactly where to go with that. So
there's definitely room for both of what you just said, and some of the initial drawings that we got were a little, in my mind, reflective of like what's going on with Ex Machina, the flight suit, the pouches,
right.
and that's always, it's always a good place to start. And then as we got more and more, they got a little more streamlined.
Right.
And then there's, of course, the one guy who went totally retro, which is just it really is a neat image.
Yeah. I like that stuff. I mean, I think the key a lot of the time is to find a balance between that sort of thing, because I think there's a real big trend now of kind of doing anti-costumes, where you'll see superheroes that won't even really wear a costume at all. I think the last round of X-Men costumes before Joss Whedon jumped on, they were sort of going that way, or the Authority sort of. They wore costumes, but
Aranya.
Yeah, it's sort of going towards guys just, I don't care about the secret identity. I'm just going to go out there. And there's something cool about that, but, it's a comic book, and, you want sort of an escapist feel to it. You want there to be an out there aspect.
The kid in you just goes back to saying, hey, every superhero has a secret identity,
Yeah, I tell you, Spider-Man's one of my favorite characters, and that's a really cool costume, and it's really ridiculous when you think about it, too. It's a silly costume, but another favorite of mine, Blue Beetle, they're both designed by Steve Ditko. They're really crazy costumes, but they're really cool when you look at them. You can't not look at them. So
one of the things Brian and I just talked about, Brian brought it up before we even started the podcast, it was something that didn't even have to do with Second Chance, was the whole idea of an emblem, of the Superman's S symbol and Flash's lightning bolt.
Right.
And
go ahead.
I was just going to say, Brian pointed out that most of DC's characters have that, and the majority of Marvel's characters do not. And Gravity does have a symbol.
Right.
So was that a conscious choice that you did, for that character, and what do you feel about that in general?
Yeah, it was a conscious choice. the idea, I think, because on the average, most of the DC characters have been around longer than most Marvel characters. I think it was, a first instinct of creators back in the day was to come up with something that symbolized the character that they were creating, so put a big S on a guy's chest whose name is Superman, or if he's Batman, he has a bat on his chest, or, something really basic and iconic, and it really brilliant ideas when you think about it, because they became logos essentially, and we all still think about them, see them today. We have T-shirts with them on them. So when I was thinking of what Gravity would do, he wants to be one of these guys. So he's going to come up with a symbol, because Spider-Man has a symbol. It might be small, but he has one. And so he wants to be a superhero, so he's got to think of one. Now, coming up with a symbol for Gravity was probably one of the hardest things I've had to think of, because how do you define Gravity as an icon? It's really kind of, it's nebulous. You can't see it. There's no real...
An apple bouncing off someone's head.
Yeah, exactly. That was actually one of the, when I was bouncing ideas off of people, somebody brought up, draw Newton under a tree. And, but a friend of mine, actually, he found this diagram online that it was part of some science paper where a guy had actually just scribbled out how the force of gravity affects the Earth and how it pushes in from all sides. And so I took that idea of the arrows, and I did that. And the first thing that the guy who had given me this idea said was, that looks like an X. So that's where the joke about the X-Men comes in Gravity.
But, I mean, I think it looks cool. I hadn't thought about it before, but now that you say that, I definitely... Oh, yeah, if you look at the yellow space, it's an X, but if you're looking at the blue arrows, you see arrows. That's kind of cool. By the way, a big thank you for putting my name in that issue 5 of Gravity.
No problem.
I was at the comic shop, and I was all proud. I was showing the owner. I'm like, look, it's my name.
Sean had given me, he says, there's 25 names on this list, and the last name is Greg Willis. Here's a couple of names to use. So I had to fill them all in, and I had to have them be alphabetical. So I was racking my brain trying to figure out, who am I going to put in here? So I was just thinking of anybody I could.
Yeah, I hurriedly, bought a copy. It was great. So I guess if we decide that we shouldn't use a flight suit per se because it's been, taken by Ex Machina or some other properties, what else is a substitute for something that's not overly costumey but still a costume? Like a flight suit is a suit, it's a costume, you know what I mean? Pilots wear them. So it accomplishes the costume without lycra, or spandex. So how else can you accomplish that if you don't use a flight suit? Like the one guy who put the big butterfly wings on her, he has a flight suit, and that's the one I think, Peter, you were really referring to.
I mean, it's great. It's a great image. It just my initial instinct was, because of the wings and the flight suit, was because Ex Machina kind of has those little propeller wings or something on his back. They're like
they're small little wings. Yeah. And again, it's not a judgment on the drawing. It was just trying to keep an open mind about if there's something that's already like that. I mean, even Mike's drawing itself, Mike Norton, your drawing, has that like under attire to her, like the shirt. If it's just a shirt, but could that also be like an extended beyond the pants that we don't see? Is that even some kind of undergarment kind of thing?
Sure. I mean, it could hinge on so many factors, like what if you define her powers more, or I was seriously going by the only factor that I was thinking of is what would a woman who was once an older woman who is now young pick out to go do her superhero adventuring in. And so it's actually a little generic. I mean, it would probably define it a little more if there was a better handle on exactly what it is she can do.
Sure.
Okay, well then let's talk about that.
Okay.
One of the guys I suggested, I threw out on the forum an idea of, some sort of wings. Not that she has wings like Angel, but that she straps on wings that, look cool. And this guy drew butterfly wings. I was picturing in my mind more like fairy wings that are kind of random, but butterfly wings are so symmetrical and stuff, but fairy wings usually have, random patterns of things in them, and they're like taller and pointier as opposed to the broader things. In my head, that looks cooler to me,
Right.
So I suppose if she had, assuming that we kept this idea that she used these wings to help her float around, they would have to be strapped on somehow. So it could almost be sort of like a backpackish kind of thing that had wings attached to it. Instead of, in comics sometimes characters have wings, like the Hawkman wings, and they have the thing that goes across the chest, but the thing on the back that supports the wings seems so small. It's like they're just almost look like the wings.
The Hawkman wings would never work in real life. There's no reason for those things.
Exactly.
They make no sense. It's really strange.
Could you do something where... Because one of we were corrected in our discussion of her powers, moving away from what Kevin was saying about being a catalyst and more into energy activation control.
Right.
And is there a way, I wonder, with what he was talking about, that you could get and I'm not sure if this is something you'd want, Brian, but instead of an actual wing, it's something that manifests when her powers manifest. So you know how like Psylocke has those little whiskery things around her eyes when she does her telekinesis.
You're talking like a display of energy.
Almost. Yeah.
Well, here's what I liked, and this is an idea. I think it's the same guy who did this drawing with the wings. He drew on her wrists. She has like these gauntlets, and attached to these gauntlets are these like small jet engine looking turbine things, right? And his idea, which I personally liked, is that there's some sort of thrusters or whatever that shoot air out. And assuming that her power is the ability to activate energy, she doesn't need a fuel source, because as long as she's concentrating, air is shooting out of these jets, giving her lift, and the wings are used as stabilization. So I liked it because it was a very concrete, realistic, as realistic as it can be, but a realistic method of saying, well, she can't really fly. She uses these wings to kind of glide her, and, to steer her, and the propulsion is what lifts her off the ground. And as long as she doesn't get knocked unconscious or something like that, she can continue to power these things just by thinking about it. And it really made sense to me, and I really liked it. But I don't know how anybody else feels about that.
Well, I remember... Oh, God.
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I remember when you were telling me about the wings that, I was thinking, like, Da Vinci wings, like, mechanical...
Oh, like great mechanical things?
Da Vinci wings.
Could that get in the way of superheroing, though?
Well, that's a good question. I mean, what... now, she can control energy, right? That's kind of nebulous. I'm trying to figure out what other
I think we were still limiting it to machines. Like Kevin's, misuse of the catalytic process, which, is cool that our listeners, instructed us in physics or whatever. But the idea was that if there's a machine, he can make it work. Or she can, or make it stop working or make it work.
Well, you're really only limited by what you can think of as far as machinery goes then, aren't you? I mean, it could be any kind of crazy Reed Richards sort of invention on her back. Maybe they are sort of some sort of light-generated sort of wings, that are, translucent or look like, fairy wings. It's created... They don't work unless she has them on.
Yeah,
it could... it could be as simple as, you know, something that looks like an iPod strapped on her back. It really is, you know, it depends on the crazy genius that's coming up with the machinery, I guess. If she powers it, then it can do anything, I suppose.
There were a couple things that came into my mind just now when Tasha mentioned that. The one is the scene in Batman Begins where he has those gloves that electrify his cape, and then the cape becomes rigid.
Right.
So there's that aspect that could have that aspect of the Da Vinci wings, because the cool thing about that is they could then fold and disappear, or just be along her upper back, and that because of her power they could be used to expand and contract again as she needs. And the thing on what's this Rob's drawing is, you see those two things on her hips?
Mm-hmm.
Those are actually, I think, the air thruster things that you're talking about. That, see how they're aimed up toward the wings? That's what I took those little pouches out.
I never thought about what they were.
So the cool thing is then she could have this really neat. You could do two things. You know, you could do the fold in, fold out with her wings, or if you want to make it a little more feminine, you could even make this kind of soft, small cape thing behind her that then also, when it activates, is what you're talking about, Brian.
Right.
So I mean, that I could see something either.
Do we all like that?
Yeah.
The reason I suggested wings and some way of flying is because it seems like most every superhero has some sort of locomotion. You know, Spider-Man shoots his web and swings. You know, some people just plain out fly. Hulk jumps. Even Captain America can jump higher than a normal man. I mean, if he wants to fly into space, someone's got to carry him. But you know, so she needed some kind of way of moving around other than just running around on the ground, because that's so limiting. But I didn't want to give her the mysterious power of flight, because too many superheroes have flight. I like that there's a flaw in it, in that if she doesn't concentrate or something, she's not flying. Mm-hmm. So you know, it builds in, you know, plot points down the road or whatever. You know? And
for an artist, you know, so that he doesn't go mad. If she's just standing and the wings are still there, you know, it gets annoying. You know, people got to walk around it.
Well, right.
So then, if you do the whole collapsing thing, then you get away with that, and you almost don't even have to show it collapse. You just, as soon as she stops thinking,
and
I kind of like
that. You know, if her power is mechanical, as opposed to some amorphous energy thing, like she can power machines that exist, as opposed to just having the ability to conjure energy, you know? So the turbine, like air booster things on her back or whatever, you know, that's a real thing. It's just like a fan, and she can just make the fan work. And if she has these collapsible wings that can steer and bend, you know, I'm almost picturing like little gears or pulleys and things, like something, because, you know, the thing that we talked about is, how did these contraptions get made? Because she didn't make them, and we were conjecturing that perhaps her husband was working on them in his workshop or whatever. But you know, I don't envision this guy as a Reed Richards kind of a crazy machine maker. You know, this could be made by, you know, some 15-year-old kid who played with a lot of Legos when he was little, you know, and he just put it on a larger scale. And I kind of like the idea of that, because it's very realistic.
Grounded.
Yeah, it's real grounded. She's a superhero. She's got a power, but she also relies on some real, honest-to-God stuff. Not to mention, it could look really cool in a drawing with, you know, it could make an artist nutty to have to draw a lot of gears and stuff, but, you know, after McFarlane did the web, anybody draws Spider-Man must go insane.
Right.
You know, so, you know, that's my thought on it, because it would look neat, and it's real, and it's not something you see every day, you know.
Well, sure. Even that just there helps, you know, think about what this person would be wearing too. I mean, if her power is to generate energy, control machines, basically, I would think she would have to, not necessarily the flight suit, but she would probably want something that would house lots of maybe inventions. You know, I'm thinking she'd have to have pockets and stuff like that. So,
True.
I'm not exactly sure what that is. I don't want to necessarily get into the whole straps for no reason sort of thing.
Like a Deadpool thing.
Yes, but
She'll have a purse.
it almost applies to her because I could just see her, come up with, hey, here's this little thing, and it looks like nothing, but because she can make it work, it does something. But so she'd have to have it on her at some place. I keep thinking of, the original X-Men movie when Magneto comes onto the train and he's got that dart, but he has no gun or anything. It's just sitting there on his belt. He can just make it go because he has that power. So all of a sudden, he doesn't need extra stuff like a gun or something to hold this dart. He has his mind, and it just sits there. So that kind of thing jumps in my mind. That sort of thing she could have. She's basically controlling the stuff that she's wearing with her power.
Right.
Yeah, I mean.
Essentially, when you think about it, stuff like the Venom costume is sort of runs on that sort of same idea. So it could be something as simple as maybe her costume is made out of like nanobite machines,
Fancy.
They can just completely transform into anything.
Wow, that's
Yeah.
that's like really intense.
Yeah.
So she's really not. She could have literally thousands of different kind of costumes because the costume would change depending on what mood she's in.
Right. I have to say the one aspect, not to move away from this, but most everybody got her face sort of what, and her physical proportions sort of what we had envisioned. We're not looking at a Kate Moss, and we're not looking at Anna Nicole Smith. That's not who we don't want those extremes. And looking at your drawing, Mike, I love, not to kiss your ass, but I love her face.
Well, thanks.
She's young, but she's in her eyes you see maturity.
Well, that was. One of the things you guys were very specific about was, where she was coming from as far as, she would be this older person that became young again. And I think somebody, I don't know if you guys mentioned her hair would be white. Yeah, you guys did.
Yeah, we did. Yeah.
To keep that feeling of that she was still an old woman,
Yeah. And so I thought about those, and I just tend to draw, not necessarily realistic women, but just I don't draw supermodels. I draw cute. I like that in real life, and that's sort of just like what I like to draw. So I don't really go the whole crazy proportion supermodel looking people. So I think that really brings back the whole down to earthness of it. If this person was once almost maybe an elderly person, I don't know. I think maybe she, at first instinct, she would say, "Hey, I'm young again. Look how hot I am." But really, she's got all that life experience. She doesn't, and she's got this new power. She really doesn't really care about, how little clothing she's going to start wearing.
Showing her thong.
Yeah, exactly.
I love the short hair too because I think that's very traditional for an older woman. Yeah.
That's just a personal preference for me. That's why I kind of like the way that it looked. So,
Tasha, what do you think of that hairstyle on Mike's drawing?
Oh, I like it. Yeah, definitely. Short hair looks good, and like you were saying, a lot of older women wear their hair short, but it looks really good on a younger woman too.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
One of the things we didn't really nail down, but that whole aspect of, and I think I see it sometimes in some other movies, where they de-age and right away they are wild and crazy and party, yeah, yippee, like Freaky Friday and, name Big and, what was that horrible one with the guy from the kid from the Wonder Years and his...
Oh, Fred Savage.
And whoever the other one was. And it's not kind of what, we didn't nail it down, but I'm pretty sure we're not thinking that.
I think we're assuming that she's still in her head. She's still a 60-some-year-old woman.
Right.
It's just that her body is different.
Right.
Right.
I think it would take a while to reverse that process. slowly become young again because she'd get used to it again.
Right.
Yeah,
I think that makes for a more interesting character.
Right.
Yeah, because I mean, how many superheroes are 60-something? You know, in their, I mean, they might be around for 60 years, but in their comics, most of them are not older than, you know, in their 30s, except for some of the Golden Age DC guys, maybe. But
well, plus you would get some interesting scenes, like maybe even some funny scenes where maybe she's stopping some criminal, young, maybe that are her age or a little younger, and she's talking to them but sounding like their grandparent, you know, and they have to stop and go, "Are you serious?" You know, meanwhile, while they're stopping and looking at her like she's weird, boom, she takes them out, you know, so.
Right.
There's some interesting things that can be done with that.
Right. Yeah. I would agree. There would be, it would make for some humorous moments. A first instinct of an older person would probably be to scold and then, you know, figure out that, I have the ability to kick this guy's butt if I want.
Yeah. Yeah, as if Aunt May suddenly got Spider-Man's powers.
Yeah.
You know,
Where did your design concept for Black Death come from?
You know what? I did tons of sketches for him, and all I knew was that I wanted some sort of skull motif. Mm-hmm. Because when I just heard the name Black Death, immediately I keep thinking of, you know, the skull and crossbones thing. So I went through tons of ideas, and they all ended up looking like Ghost Riders. And I was trying to figure out something. There was this anime thing that I was looking at where, no, it wasn't anime. It was something where a guy was wearing one of those Halloween costumes that look like skeletons.
Oh yeah.
And it's just black. That was in Karate Kid too, where they were all dressed like that. There's something really creepy about that. And so I said, well, I just paint the skull on his face and not even make it look realistic or even that scary, but it would just be scary because it's sitting there. And then I just stylized the skull again on his chest so that it just made it more of an icon. So, but you can still tell from the little flame thing that we gave him on top that there's a little remnant of Ghost Rider still there. But
yeah, like is it hair or something that's kind of flopping around like that?
Yeah, well, I wanted to. Well, I don't want to give anything away. I wanted to sort of tie him into another aspect of the story with that. So.
Okay. By the way, I did order the digest.
Oh, cool, cool.
It's in this month's previews, right? I think, yeah. So
I can't wait to see how that ends up looking because they shrink it down and put it on different papers, so it should look pretty cool.
I mean, all the Runaways looked good on in that style, so.
Oh, yeah, I loved them. I bought them all like that. I didn't buy them when they first came out. So.
One of the things I wanted to ask you, Mike, because you did respond once or twice on the forum to it, was the idea that Eric Larson brought out about creating new characters, and I assume you read his article or listened to the episode, maybe? Yes, no?
Yeah, both.
Okay. Because, you know, here you are with, you know, Sean and yourself and whoever else was involved, creating a new character, but yet still as a part of Marvel Comics and I assume Marvel Comics property.
Yeah.
So, what, and again, I mean, I'm not sure how much I can ask and how much you can reveal, but what is lost in the way of doing that? You know, this is a new character. It's not something that you guys, you know, self-published or anything like that. But
right.
You know, I assume there has to be some creative control that you have to give up, and that's understood, you know, at the beginning.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, it's not like something that you own completely by yourself. It's not like tomorrow me and Sean can say, well, I decided let's do a Gravity miniseries with Savage Dragon. And we can do that because we own it. You can't because Marvel owns it. And Marvel can say, well, we want to put Gravity in this book. And they'll ask us, what do you think about it? But ultimately the decision is up to them.
Right.
And, you know, it's fine. I mean, me and Sean knew that creating him. It's pretty the trade-up is, the trade-off is, it's pretty cool to say that you created something in the Marvel Universe. I mean, that's our character.
Right.
And it says it in the book, created by Sean and Mike. It's, that's pretty neat. And I'm really actually looking forward to seeing them in Marvel Team Up being drawn by somebody else. There's something really cool.
It'll be the first time, right?
Yeah, it's the first time.
Do you think you'll be a little overly critical when you see it?
I already have been. I've seen some of it, so it was actually more of a joke when I said I actually emailed Robert Kirkman about it. But it was more of a joke about it. It really looks cool. It really looks cool.
Yeah.
Paco Medina is one of my favorite artists right now. So.
Yeah, it's. I mean, you know, here you are. You know, you actually did. You know, you created something new. You know, we've been talking about it for a couple episodes of where are the new characters. You know, and here, you know, you guys did it.
Well, you know, we're kind of lucky that way because, you know, up until around the Marvel Next line, they weren't really creating brand new characters. You know, they did Aranya, who was actually the pioneer for the Next line, I believe, and then you had all these other different ones. But we're pretty lucky to actually get to do that. And I mean, I've created my own stuff in the past. I mean, I'd say the majority of my comics work has been creator-owned stuff. So I'm no stranger to it. But on the flip side, I really like playing with other people's characters. There's something really cool about it. I could draw Spider-Man for a good long bit without getting bored.
Yeah. Cool. Hey, is there any other plans for Gravity at this point? Or are they still waiting for numbers to come back on the digest orders? Or
I think there's a little bit of that. He'll be in Marvel Team Up. I believe he's going to be in the Christmas special that Marvel's going to do.
I had heard that too.
So he's around, and I know they like him over there. So I would say, I mean, the optimist in me says, wants to believe that the odds are good, but there's nothing that I know of yet, definitely, that I could talk about. So.
Okay. And now you're working full bore on the Spider-Man Marvel Adventure Spider-Man?
Yeah, and I'm having a lot of fun with that. These are, I mean, a lot of people think of these as the kid stories, and it is the younger readers' line, but these are really the sort of stories that when I was a kid I was reading. You know, they're, you know, one story wrap up at the end, and they're fighting all these classic villains, and there's no baggage like a lot of the Spider titles have now.
Right. That's cool.
One of our another poster on the forum, David, I believe his last is Wachter. I can't remember how he pronounces his name, but he does Scar Tissue, and he also drew a Second Chance. And the way he described it was, as an older woman who is now young, he felt that, you know, she would probably pick something a little more conservative. So she's kind of in this jacketed, what would you call that? It looks kind of military-ish,
yeah.
You know, and I know we threw that around, you know, about the whole, you know, maybe her husband worked for the military or ties with the military or whatever. And I like that. When I saw that, I went, you know, it does move away from a costume per se, and it becomes just kind of like a stylized outfit. But there's some neat. I kind of like the jacket. I think even you brought up the thing about a flight jacket before the flight suit came up, Brian.
I might have. Yeah. I can't remember.
There's something very commanding about it. You know, maybe this is something that she would wear later on in the run, you know, once she feels a little bit more sure about herself. But I thought as a starting point, it worked pretty nice.
No, I agree. I think a sort of military angle, at least in the style of dress, isn't a bad way to go. I actually even thought of that when I was doing because the sort of the shirt that she's wearing is sort of loosely based on those. It's short sleeve, but loosely based on like the military sweater sort of thing. It's got the pads on the shoulders and stuff like that. So I think just the design of a lot of that clothing it's meant to be regal, like you said, but there's like an action underpinning, like, you know, you could just go into a fight at any moment, sort of thing.
Exactly.
You know, when I was watching, I'm kind of going off on a tangent, but when Star Trek: The Next Generation was on, and there were a couple seasons, the first couple seasons, where they all just basically had the one-piece jumpsuit thing, but then they started to introduce two pieces, and then even Picard got like a jacket over.
Right.
And that was like, as soon as I saw that, I went, bam, he's the captain, you know, and so,
right.
So there is something to say about, you know, pieces that you can wear like a dress uniform, but then you could take off certain things and then go into action.
Well, yeah, I mean, the evolution of those costumes really do. I mean, they became more and more military as the show progressed. They became less and less, I guess, science fiction-y, maybe.
Yeah,
There were. There's something about having no collar that really doesn't seem like you're in charge of anything, you know. And so those first seasons, it's kind of hard to take somebody seriously when they have like this low-cut outfit. So I think, yeah, as long as those jackets, they just seem, there's something out in the field sort of feel to it, you know. It's like you're ready for action when you got a jacket on. I actually designed a jacket for Gravity, but he doesn't wear it yet, I guess, because it was a motorcycle outfit. And so I figured, you know, it gets cold in New York. Maybe you want to put a jacket on. So
yeah.
I've never had him wear it before.
Well, even Indiana Jones, you know, he's in the dead of the desert, and he's got a jacket on.
Yeah,
you know?
he never takes it off,
Yeah.
does he? Jeez, that guy's crazy.
That thing reeks.
It's leather, too, yeah, and he's always sweating. He's sweating it through his shirt. He's got, oh, man. Ugh. You gotta think of being on that set. Oh, man, that jacket probably did stink. Wow.
But he's Harrison Ford, and the women love him anyway.
Yeah, that's true. They just scramble for the jacket anyway.
That's
right.
It
smells terrible. I love it.
Hey, I understand you started a podcast now as well.
Yeah, it's terrible. We started one that me and Chris Crank from Devils Do Publishing decided, let's see what it sounds like. And first one was okay. It's just two guys sitting around talking about watching TV essentially right now. So I don't know if that makes for compelling listening right now. So hopefully one day it'll be something interesting. But
Do you have a URL that you can tell everyone?
yeah, it's crankcast.net right now. It's CRANKCAST.net. I had to think about it there. I'm not very smart, huh? But it's there's only I think there'll be 2 episodes tomorrow. He's about to put up the second one, and it's just long-winded, annoying conversation basically. Nothing as interesting as talking about comics. Although we do talk about comics, but it's more, we get off the beaten path as far as that's concerned.
Hey, who thought we would, you know, when Brian and I first started this, it was just 2 guys talking comics.
Oh, man, everybody wants to talk about comics.
Well, that's
everybody. That's the thing I hate is you guys don't have like a call-in, because I sit there and listen to it. I'm like, oh, they recorded this already. I can't get in on this conversation. Like,
what did you want to talk? What did you? Was there something in specific that you?
Oh no, I think something comes up in every episode where I'm like, oh man, but no, I can't think of anything specific.
Okay. Hey, we're all for, you know, having guests on the show. It's just so cool to get an insider opinion on a lot of these things.
Oh well, I like to do it. It's really fun for me actually. Sitting in the house all day drawing, you don't really get out that much.
Sure.
I can imagine that keeps you busy.
Yeah.
Cool. Yeah, great. I think we're going to...
Is that it?
Yeah, because I'm not sure where we kind of want to bounce ideas. Like, I think the main point of these second chance episodes is just to keep bouncing ideas around so that people can go out and listen to it and then bring in more, send in more pictures or...
Yeah, we got we got a decent amount of feedback on the forum from the first episode, and now when we put this one up, hopefully people will say, "Oh, okay, I like where you're going with this."
Right.
And then maybe they'll find some faults with some things we said, and then maybe they'll have some better ideas, and then I mean, the next one we'll probably start tackling her backstory and motivations and how because we suggested ideas, but we never really cemented any.
It'd be kind. Oh, go ahead.
I was just thinking, I don't know if you guys brought it up or not already, and it's kind of similar to what you were already talking about, but I was thinking about mechanics and the kind of outfits they wear, because she's all about controlling mechanical stuff, and I mean, they kind of have like a jumpsuit kind of thing,
That's
too.
true. Like they have,
It's like
exactly, and they have the little name on the pocket and everything.
Right.
Yeah.
That kind of makes sense.
Maybe that, and like have her wear like a belt that she can put stuff in. I don't know.
And that actually brings up an interesting idea: is that instead of being some military scientist guy, maybe her husband was just a mechanic. Maybe it's as simple as that.
Good idea.
Yeah.
I mean, why not? Maybe he ran a junkyard or something, so he had access to all these pieces and parts. I mean, it doesn't have to be glamorous. That's the thing. In comics, there's so many cliches in comics like that. Maybe this is completely different. Maybe she and her husband, there was nothing really special about them at all. And maybe in his junkyard he found this thing that gives powers out. Maybe that's how he found it. We were trying to.
I really like that idea. Actually, that's really cool.
And the junkyard would give her all sorts of stuff to build from too.
Yeah, there's all kinds of crazy, combinations you can come up with out of that sort of thing.
Have you ever watched the show Junkyard Wars?
Yeah.
Where they make a submarine in 12 hours out of stuff from a junkyard. It's unbelievable. So, it proves that it can be done.
Did you ever read the old epic comic series Steel Grip Starkey?
No.
Steel Grip Starkey and the Ultimate Power Tool, I think was what it was called. And he had this box. It looked like a lunch box. And he'd come over to whatever problem there was, and he'd open it up, and this incredible, crazy-looking erector set sort of machine would pop out of it, and it would change as the situation would need. And it was just crazy looking.
That's kind of cool.
Because I think when we were passing around her origin, bits of her origin, we touched on every origin aspect I think we could. Aliens, military, artifact, finding something that's from a lost civilization, and then we had the whole, her husband was rich, and that's why she was a kept woman, and yada yada yada, and sometimes it's just as simple as they just worked in a junkyard, like you said, maybe that's all.
Well, I think that's why I probably like it so much, is that it is simple and therefore not the idea anybody would immediately come to.
Right.
And I of course I'm prejudiced to it because I thought of it, but I just still like the idea that the reason, she gets a power. We still haven't exactly determined how she got a power, but she gets a power and she's so happy because she always loved superheroes. How many? Whoa.
Getting a little feedback here.
Yeah. It's like, how many people read tabloids? All of them. I mean, millions of people read tabloids. That's why they're so popular. So in a world with superheroes, of course there would be tabloids about superheroes. So it's not unreasonable for a middle-aged to older woman to be reading tabloids and love superheroes. Sure. I mean, that's not unreasonable, I don't think. So, I like that that's her whole motivation was she was always fascinated with him, so she becomes one. Big deal, right? Yeah. It doesn't have to be fancy and ridiculous,
Sure.
Sure.
One of the things we could maybe put out there, because we kind of got a little more detail about, what we want from her costume. Maybe, the thing with the wings and things like that. Maybe our listeners and whoever wants to take a stab at it, some cool images might be, what would her insignia look like? What would her emblem look like? What would her what would her powers look like? If it was just her hand and the other side a gun, what would that look like? Maybe that might be some fun things to send in. A creative way that a creative thing that she would do with like a machine. You know, you could do a funny thing like a vending machine, and all she's got to do is knock on it, and candy comes out. You know, or something weird like that. You know,
Right.
it might be fun to see some.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, I feel good now. I mean, we got a lot of ideas, and
Yeah, it's exciting.
Yeah, I mean, this is something that, it's funny, is like, I'm sure you guys knock out Gravity in like a couple meetings and a couple sessions. We're going to be doing this for like a year.
It's a slow process. It's just, and it's, every meeting you have. I just had a little creative conference sort of with Tim Seeley at Devil's Due about something that I wanted to do of my own. And, you just come out of those with, your juices are flowing and you're all excited, and it's just sort of the same thing. It's really fun to do. That's why people want to do it.
Yeah.
Hey, Mike, can we totally change gears? Did you read Infinite Crisis?
Yeah, I read it. I actually talked about it on the latest podcast I did. Not like in depth, but just I was a little shocked when I read it. I was a little surprised.
Yeah?
I didn't know that was coming.
So surprised in a good way?
Not really.
Oh.
I guess I'm one of those guys that was, I've gotten used to the way things are. Yeah, I guess you could say that. And I don't want to give anything away at all. So I've gotten used to the way things have been for the past 20 years. And this is sort of changing that, I would say.
Do you think there were people when the original Crisis was around and who had been reading since the first appearance of Barry Allen Flash probably felt the same way?
Oh, sure, totally.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that they shouldn't have done it at all. I think it's good because one of the things I mentioned is I was reading it and there's some tense moments in there. You guys mentioned in your last podcast, I think, about the whole violence sort of thing, and there were some moments in there where I'm like, they're not going to do it. Oh my God, they did.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah,
I think that's what you want in a book like that, because you don't want people to say, "Hey, you built this up for a year and nothing happened." So I think it was definitely worth the money I paid for it.
Oh, that's right. I forgot. I was going to say they didn't send you comp copies, but you're over at Marvel, not DC. I'm sorry.
Well, I get comps in my Teen Titans Go, but not the rest of the book.
Right. That's cool. No, we're looking forward to it, so I can't wait. Great.
All right. Well, I guess that's good for an episode.
We'll be coming back to Second Chance again next month. We'll probably try to do this at least once a month.
Yeah, more or less.
And I'm sure we'll be erratic in our schedule. But I think it's interesting, the process. I mean, that was kind of the whole idea behind episode 50, was the process more than the actual product. And it's kind of cool that, we get people like Mike Norton who pitches in his 2 cents and really just... I envy you guys. I can't imagine what it's like having to do this, but then also having to deal with like an editor and the company and the business suits and all that,
It's a learning process.
Yeah.
But then when it's all said and done, you walk into the comic shop and there's your book on the shelf, and that's got to be cool.
I'm not going to lie and say that, it's nothing, but it really is cool. I mean, especially if you're a lifelong fan like we are. So
yeah.
And the really interesting thing will be to see if a year or 2 or 3, Gravity's the next, X-23 or something, and for some reason some story got written that makes him incredibly popular. And it might not even be a story that Sean writes. It might be somebody else comes in and pushes him over the edge, and everyone's like, "Oh, this guy's cool." It could happen, and that's kind of neat.
Yeah, I agree.
Cool. Well, thank you so much for joining us, and we wish you the best of luck on the sales of Gravity and Spider-Man and Marvel Adventures Spider-Man, and hopefully we'll talk to you again soon.
Sure. Thanks, man, for letting me be on. I'll keep listening.
Hey, thanks.
Great.
Thanks for coming on.
All right, bye.
All right, bye-bye.
Take care.
Bye.
That was cool.
Yeah. It's always great to get, just to hear him be excited about this as much as we are, it's really cool.
Well, you can tell that he's been doing it for a while, because he's got ideas, and they just, everything that he said made perfect sense.
Yep.
And it was stuff that I hadn't thought about. And so...
he can get a little bit right to the point, as opposed to, we sometimes go way off the beaten path, to try to explain something very simple.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
That was cool. And good idea about the mechanics outfit, Tasha. I think that just took our character in a completely different direction, which I think is so much better than everything that any of us talked about the last time we were together.
Yeah. Like I said, I think we got way too much into the cliches, and
exactly.
And sometimes if you want something new, because I think it's interesting that we stuck with the idea that it's a woman, which that's not the first impulse. I'm sure most creators.
No, I would have had a man if Kevin hadn't opened his mouth.
Right.
So
and then
that's good.
And then we had the whole de-aging aspect, which I was against. I was like, is that really interesting? And we haven't really dealt with that yet, but. And now we have this other thing where we tried to make our origin into this huge thing that would create backstory and this underlying plot that could run for 75 issues until we found out, and now it's just as simple as maybe we don't need that,
Right.
So stuff to think about, food for thought. So let us know what you guys out there think, you guys and gals. We'd love to hear your opinions, and anybody else that wants to take a crack at some of these drawings, by all means, please.
Yeah, I mean it's always very, very cool for us when we see a new drawing in the inbox. And I apologize if sometimes I am delayed in my getting them up on the gallery, but they will get there. I just have to find the time. So awesome,
cool.
Yeah, and join the forum, because I'm sure when this episode airs, people will start a thread, or we'll start a thread and get people talking about phase 2 of Second Chance. Second Chance. Something like that. I still like that name. Like, I think that her name should be Chance, and the name of the book should be Second Chance. I just think it makes perfect sense.
Sure. I mean, what was funny was when I was listening to that episode, the second part of episode 50, for the show notes. Everybody kept saying, she's getting a second chance on life. Somebody, like at least 2 or 3 people, actually mentioned that. And then when I came in and said her name should be Second Chance, I didn't even think that it's already been said 5 or a million times, And then as I'm listening to it, I went, oh my God, everybody's been saying it. And then, it makes sense.
Right.
Again, going to the most simplest.
And it's a good, and I guess, I'm just thinking, if you're walking past the shelf of a comic, that's a good name for a comic book.
Mm-hmm.
It's as good as any other name for a comic book. And
it has weight, it has meaning. I mean, I think of Gravity, Gravity the hero, but there's other meanings to Gravity,
Sure.
So there's a kind of like a nice little play on words.
Exactly. Cool. All right. I guess that's the end of the episode, and I don't have to play any fancy closing music or anything right now.
We'll just say our goodbyes.
We'll just say we'll see you next time, and thanks for joining us.
Thanks for joining us. See you.
And big thanks to Mike Norton.
Bye.
Bye.